Hello friends and welcome to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Lisa and I love traveling. I've been to over 100 countries, but I absolutely love Italy and I enjoy so much coming back there. So this video is a full video dedicated to our road trip around the beautiful province of Puglia. In total, we spent around a week in Puglia. We started our trip in Brindisi, then drove to Lecce. From there, we went to Specchia, Gallipoli, Matera, even though Matera is technically located in another province, in Basilicata, Alberobello, Gravina, Polignano, Mare, Monopoli, Ostuni, and we finished our trip in Gravina. Our entire trip took around 7 days and we landed and departed from Brindisi. We also hired a car there. Good morning. It's the first stop of our trip. We are currently in a city called Lecce, which is one of the biggest and most beautiful cities in the Puglia region of Italy. We have a couple of hours to walk around and enjoy the city. I actually bought an ice cream, the Kinder Bueno one. I haven't seen it in the UK, so I was really excited to try because I love Kinder Bueno. And we're currently in a really pretty park right in the heart of Lecce. It's Thursday morning, so it's quite empty, which is expected. I'm pretty sure it must be super busy on a weekend. And we're currently heading to the city center. Beautiful. Reminds me of the Snota in Sicily. Lecce did in fact remind us of Noto in Sicily, but mainly because of its Baroque architecture. Lecce actually flourished in the 16th and 17th centuries, mainly because of the limestone exports. The limestone of Lecce is even called Lecce stone. Lecce also used to be the capital of Puglia for a few years. Right now it's not anymore. The capital of Puglia these days is the city called Mare. As you can already see, Lecce is actually a very beautiful city, and because of that it has the nickname Florence of the South. Although, in my opinion, it doesn't resemble Florence too much. It is actually a little bit more similar to Noto in Sicily, as I said, because of the architectural style. Lecce is actually an ancient city. It was founded by the king of Salento, then it was dominated by Romans, and you can actually see a lot of Roman ruins in the heart of the city, like these ones, for example. While Lecce was of course flourishing during the Roman times, it declined after the fall of the Roman Empire, but then started flourishing again when the Normans arrived in year 1000. They also started building a lot of impressive constructions like convents. In the 15th and 16th centuries, there was actually a war between Spanish and French over the kingdom of Naples, and when the Spanish eventually won, they established a base in Lecce and built a castle with really strong city walls. Lecce was actually a base, a fortress that was in a very strategic location, relatively close to the east and the Ottoman Empire the Spanish were fighting against at this time. Lecce is a wonderful city and there are plenty of things to do. If you only have a few hours to spend in Lecce, I recommend just wandering around and exploring the most beautiful streets of the city. If you can spend more time in Lecce, then you can do a bit of sightseeing and visit one of the palaces or churches of Lecce. But in any case, I definitely recommend sitting down and eating something in the city. Lecce is considered to be one of the gastronomy capitals of Italy. It has really good cuisine. There are a few dishes that are considered native to Lecce, like pasta or ricette, for example, one of my favorite pastas actually. And there are some other dishes like puccia, which is a little bit of a sandwich with a big mozzarella inside. It tastes absolutely glorious. But then there are also rustico leccese, which is a savory street food pastry snack. Next, we drove for about 40 minutes down to the south to a place called Polignano Beach. It was not actually a proper beach, it was more of a natural cove, but it was really hot that day, and we were looking for a place to dip and maybe spend half an hour in to just swim and enjoy the sea. And we found this place on Google Maps and it looked absolutely beautiful. Just look at the color of the water. It was a little bit difficult to enter the water because it wasn't really a beach. There were actually just large stones and smaller stones where people were sitting, but look at how crystal clear the water was, and there were plenty of fishes. There were small fishes, larger fishes as well, and a really beautiful cave. The water temperature was actually on a cooler side, which was a little bit surprising for the middle of September, especially because it was much warmer in Gallipoli. So we had to move all the time inside the water. And it's also worth mentioning, in case you're wondering, there is a large parking lot just outside the beach where you can park your car and leave it for a couple of hours. After visiting Polignano Beach, we drove for another half an hour, and on the way we saw some really incredible landscapes. They looked surreal. It didn't resemble the rest of Italy at all, maybe because the climate here is a little bit more dry and arid. Our next destination was a town called Specchia, and it seemed like we were the only tourists in the whole town, but it wasn't surprising because Specchia is located relatively far from the most touristy places in Puglia. This is one of the less touristy towns in Puglia. Currently it's absolutely empty. Looks really beautiful. Not too many tourists visiting Puglia end up driving that way, just because in that bottom of the hill there are not too many famous names. Most of the people actually go to places like Alberobello, Monopoli, Polignano, Mare, the ones we will visit as well, and I will cover them in the last part of this series of videos about Puglia. But because we wanted to spend some time in Gallipoli, and Gallipoli is not too far away from Specchia, we decided to visit this place as it looked really pretty, at least on the pictures, and in the real life it also didn't disappoint. In lots of countries around the world, a place like Specchia would be a top touristy destination where lots of people from all around the country would come and visit it. But just because it's Italy, and honestly every single town in Italy is stunning, there are just so many beautiful places that Specchia is not even in the top 5 places in Puglia, just one of the provinces of Italy. And to be fair, it takes around 2 hours to drive to Specchia from Alberobello or Monopoli, unless they are going to Gallipoli as well. On the main square of Specchia, we found this really nice bakery. As it turned out later, this is actually a chain of bakeries that we saw all over Puglia. And we got some pastries, got some Aperols, and sat on the main square and enjoyed the sunset in this beautiful town. And then we drove to the final destination of the day and the destination for the next couple of days, Gallipoli, where we stayed at this stunning hotel called Il Giardino della Regina. I will leave the link to the hotel in the description of the video and in the pinned comment in case you want to find it. The place was absolutely stunning and this garden was incredibly photogenic. Lots of people from the outside were coming to this garden to take photos. Of course, before traveling to Puglia, we have read multiple resources and guides on the best places to visit in the region, and almost no guides have featured Gallipoli. And since we booked Gallipoli for 3 nights because we thought it's a good place to work remotely and have good access to the beach, it was actually also way more affordable than other places in Puglia. We didn't have high expectations at all. But having visited Gallipoli, I must say that it is now one of my favorite places in the entire region. It, I think, honestly has it all. It has beautiful beaches right in the heart of the old town. It's a very charming, very beautiful town surrounded by old city walls. It has incredible history. It has good restaurants. The prices are so good. They are much lower than in lots of other places, especially touristic places in Puglia, and food quality was on point. Everything was really delicious. And overall, the atmosphere in Gallipoli was great. It was less touristy. I haven't seen many foreigners at all. It was mostly local tourists, and it felt really nice. If you ever visited Sicily before and been to a place called Syracuse, that's what Gallipoli reminded me of. Of course, I think Syracuse is maybe on a higher level. It's a little bit more impressive, a little bit more beautiful, more well taken care of, and generally restaurants and shops are a little bit fancier in Syracuse, but Gallipoli is more laid back, more chilled and simple version of Syracuse, and it has lots of similarities with it. It's also a walled city, has access to the sea, built in a similar way, has similar architecture, and is also very, very pretty. So yeah, if you've been to Syracuse, if you liked it, you might actually like Gallipoli as well. Gallipoli is also a perfect place to stay for longer, for at least 3 days, maybe up to a week. It's much more affordable, as I mentioned, and you can stay in a place that is just minutes away from beautiful beach. And it's a great place to work remotely from. It also has very interesting history. There are plenty of things to see. So we were really happy we had a chance to stay there. But it was time for us to leave Gallipoli and head to the next destination, the famous town called Alberobello. Actually, right now we are going to one of the most Instagrammable and popular places in Puglia. It's called Alberobello. I'm sure you have heard of this place or have seen it all over Instagram a couple of years ago. It's this famous village with beautiful kind of like conus-shaped buildings. So we are finally going there. It's quite a long drive from Gallipoli, so it's almost 2 hours driving. There weren't that many places to stop at on the way, so we just went straight ahead to Alberobello. Even though Alberobello is a very touristy place, it's very busy, there are plenty of parking spaces nearby because there are plenty of parking lots. The only downside is that parking spaces are expensive because you need to pay for the entire day to park. Honestly, I think Alberobello couldn't be busier than it is now. There are literally, I think, thousands of people on the streets, but that is expected because it's one of the most popular villages in this region of Italy. Of course, Alberobello is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's one of the most beautiful and picturesque villages in all Italy. That's why it's so touristy and that's why it's so busy. It's especially busy on the weekends when lots of tour buses come to the town, but also lots of people drive here, so you can expect it to be busy all the time, especially during the highest season from end of April until the middle of October. Alberobello has a very interesting history. Of course, it is famous for its trulli. Trulli are these conical shaped buildings, and the singular of trulli is trullo. The first mention of trulli in the literature appear, I think, in the 14th and 15th centuries, and they were very common in the 15th century. Right now, of course, Alberobello is a larger town. Only in the old historical town you can see trulli. Outside the town you can see normal buildings, but before it used to be the town that consisted of trulli alone. And the reason for that is actually to avoid taxes. In the Kingdom of Naples, it was actually mandatory to pay taxes in settlements. So locals came up with a brilliant idea of building trulli instead of houses because they were really easy to disassemble. If the local authorities came to visit and collect taxes, they would be able to dismantle these houses relatively quickly, and all the authorities would be able to see would be just a pile of stones. And of course, it all changed in 1798 when Alberobello finally got a town status. Right now, it's mostly a touristy place, and one of the best things to do in Alberobello is just to walk around and enjoy beautiful streets. There are plenty of souvenir shops where you buy ceramics, you can buy plenty of souvenirs, you can buy embroidery, and there are also nice panoramic wine bars, like this one, for example. I wouldn't recommend this as a bar because the wine selection was probably the smallest one in the world. It only had one red wine and one white wine. It wasn't that great, but the view from here was absolutely amazing. So if you find some other wine bars, I definitely recommend going there instead. But there are also cafes, there are also plenty of Airbnbs where you can stay in a trullo. There are also lots of nice cafes slightly outside the old town area. Our next destination was located an hour and a half away from Alberobello, and it's Gravina in Puglia. We went to this place because it was located just a short drive away from our next destination, Matera. But we also wanted to visit Gravina because it was featured in one of the recent James Bond movies, No Time to Die. And particularly this bridge was featured there on a car chase. So these are the shots from the movie actually, and it looked absolutely stunning in the movie. So we wanted to see it in real life. So we were actually a little bit sad to find it under reconstruction. It was being renovated, so we couldn't enjoy the full view of this bridge. But Gravina itself kind of felt really medieval. Although, of course, it's not the medieval town, it's much older than that. The archaeological finds testify that the first settlements there were as early as the 5th millennium before Christ. So it is a very, very old town. But it's not touristy at all. There wasn't even a parking, actually. So you can imagine there are very few tourists, but it also felt very authentic. And of course, it's very close to the next destination, Matera. Matera is technically not located in Puglia, but most people who go on a Puglia road trip also visit Matera. It's located just on the border with Puglia, but it's located in a province called Basilicata. Matera is actually not a very small city. We thought it's tiny, but it actually has quite a big part outside the old city center. There are roads you can drive and leave your car outside the city center, but the old town that is full of sassi is car-free, of course. And most likely, if you want to stay in a nice hotel and have a wonderful experience, a very unique experience, because most of the hotels in the old town are located in former caves, so the caves were converted into rooms, but it comes at a price because you won't be able to bring a large bag unless you want to carry it all around the town and climb countless stairs. And oh my, there are many stairs here. Of course, if you can't avoid coming with a large suitcase, for example, you're coming to Europe for a very long trip, but in this case, it is possible, of course, to find a hotel that is located on one of the streets where cars are allowed to drive. Cars are only for residents. You can't come there by a rental car, but a taxi might be able to drive and drop you straight at the hotel. You might be able to find some hotels by just looking at the map, or you might message the hotels directly and ask whether they have taxi access or not. The hotel where we stayed is called Locanda San Martino Terme, and it was a very beautiful cave hotel with stunning views. It was on a pricier side, but not as expensive as some other hotels we've seen in Matera. And our view was spectacular. We also had access to the beautiful terrace and just enjoyed stunning sunset there. But what was even more impressive, that it had access to a cave spa, and it was probably the most unique spa I've ever been to. I've never seen anything like that. I know there is a cave spa in London called Mare, but I'm not sure it's similar or not. At least on the pictures it didn't look similar. You still need to pay to enter the spa though, even if you're staying at the hotel, which was a little bit surprising. So I think we paid something like 50 euros. It wasn't cheap, it was 25 euros per person, but the experience was wonderful. There were multiple pools, and there was a spa, a sauna, a steam room. Everything was great, and we spent maybe around 1.5 or 2 hours just enjoying the spa. It's worth mentioning that it is quite small, and you can also, as you can imagine, visit it if you're not staying at the hotels. But it might be worth checking whether you need to make a booking in advance to book your slot, because they don't want the spa to be too crowded. After the spa, we went for a walk around Matera's old town, and I filmed a little time lapse. I will not add voiceover to these parts, I'll just play some beautiful music, and then I'll be back with more commentary on what we did during the weekend in Matera. One of the most photogenic locations in all Matera is a bar called Zipa. Surprisingly, we didn't need to book it, and there were lots of places, even though we had to stay in the queue for about 10 minutes, but we were seated promptly and were able to enjoy the cocktails, which were really, really good. Surprisingly, we didn't expect them to be so good, so I definitely recommend this place, and it's especially popular for sunset. But for the actual sunset, we went back to the hotel. So that's the view from the terrace of our hotel. Honestly, it was magical. I think we stayed for about 30 minutes on the terrace, just waiting for the sun to go down. Even though it wasn't sunny that day, I can only imagine how beautiful the sunset must have been if it was sunny, it wasn't cloudy that day. But even though it was cloudy, it still looked gorgeous. After the sunset, we went for a walk to some of the main commercial streets of the old town. There are a couple, and lots of the shops and clothing stores were still open, so we were able to visit some of them. They sold some really, really nice things. And then we headed to a restaurant called Oi Mari, or Oi Mare, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It was so beautiful inside, and the prices were a little bit on a higher end, but actually, because of the fact that it started raining, actually started pouring, we didn't have a reservation and all the restaurants became suddenly really full, that was the one that had availability. So we were able to have dinner there, and everything was actually really delicious, especially this pasta. The only downside is that it actually took us over 2 hours to finish dinner there, even though we didn't ask for too much food. But by the time we finished dinner, it already stopped raining, so we went for a little walk around the old town again. The next morning, it was finally sunny, so we rushed to the main viewpoints pretty early in the morning. We just finished breakfast at the hotel. And there are a few main viewpoints in Matera. So the first one we went to is located next to the church in the middle of the old town. And that's the view you can see from there. As you can see, it's beautiful. And the old town of Matera is quite sizable. So why is Matera so unique? Well, first of all, it's actually one of the oldest towns in the entire world. People have been living here for 3,000 years non-stop, and there are actually some signs that indicate settlements here that are at least 12,000 years old. Because Matera is so old, it was occupied by Greeks, Romans, Longobards, Byzantines, Saracens, Swabians, Angevins, Aragonese, and Bourbons. And while now Matera is one of the most touristy places in Italy, and it's definitely visited by lots of tourists, and it's getting a lot of investment, you can see lots of hotels in the Sassi being rebuilt, and just lots of Sassi, which are the caves of Matera, being renovated. It wasn't always the case. Before 1950s, it was actually one of the poorest places in the entire Italy, and people were living in inhuman conditions. The conditions were so bad that in 1950s, the government of Italy actually forcefully relocated people from the caves to the more modern part of Matera that surrounds the city. The plan was almost to demolish all the caves, but a group of local enthusiasts rebelled against this destruction of some of the most unique city center of all Italy, and eventually it became a UNESCO heritage site, and that drove significant investment. The first cave hotel opened in 1990s, and many more hotels followed afterwards. Now more and more hotels are opening in the caves, which is wonderful. Can you imagine for a second that this gorgeous city could have been lost? I can't imagine that, honestly. This city is so gorgeous. And lots of people, including us, only found out about Matera because of one of the recent James Bond movies where it was prominently featured. I just saw this magical city and I had to visit it. And it was definitely worth it. After visiting Matera, we headed to the next destination, beautiful town called Polignano a Mare. Coastal town with a different scenery, really joyful, really beautiful and colorful, called Polignano a Mare. It took us just over an hour to drive there from Matera, and we had some difficulties finding a parking lot because the ones in the city center were actually closed because of the road works. So we found one that was next to the train station. It was a massive one, but it was quite a long walk to the city center. It took us around 15 to 20 minutes, but if you don't mind a nice walk, and the walk was definitely nice, we saw this beautiful street market selling lots of souvenirs on the way. So if you don't mind it, that's totally fine. Once you enter the old town through this central gate, the architecture changes completely, and the streets become narrower and the views become absolutely beautiful. This is probably one of the most iconic views in Polignano a Mare. It shows up when you start Googling it, and yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. And the beach is actually busy. Because it was end of September, it was still very hot. It was around 30 degrees and the sea temperature was still really warm. Lots of people were spending a day on the beach. It was also weekend, so of course it was busy. We spent some time strolling around the streets of the old town. The
town looks immaculate, freshly repainted in a really good condition, especially compared to Gravina. But then again, Gravina is not a very touristy place. We also originally thought of staying in either Polignano a Mare or Monopoli for a couple of days, but it turned out it's actually really pricey to stay there. And probably the most affordable beach destination in Puglia is actually Gallipoli, where we stayed for the chunk of our beach trip in Puglia and just visited Polignano a Mare and Monopoli for a day, and then also stayed in Gravina for a couple of days. As it turned out, it's much cheaper, but then again, Gravina is not on the sea, so of course you can drive there, but it's not the same as staying right next to the sea and having a view like this from your Airbnb or a hotel. A lot of beaches near Polignano a Mare actually have cliffs and really beautiful blue water. There are also plenty of restaurants located in Polignano a Mare. The prices are a little bit on the pricier side compared to other towns in Puglia, but of course much more affordable compared to places like Amalfi Coast, for example. It was time for us to go to the next destination, located just a really short 15-minute drive away.
We arrived to a town called Monopoli, and it's time for lunch, so we are looking for a place that is not closing in half an hour because it's already 2:30.
We found the prices in Monopoli a bit lower than in Polignano a Mare and got a really beautiful portion of orecchiette, which is a traditional pasta in Puglia. Orecchiette is probably one of my favorite type of pastas, and I can definitely recommend trying it in Puglia. You will love it, and I think we paid something like 8 or 9 euros for a portion of pasta, which was a steal. Given the proximity of Monopoli to Polignano a Mare, I expected the towns to be really similar, but they were actually pretty different, maybe even very different. So there were no cliffs to be found in Monopoli. Instead, there was a really quaint port with nice fishing boats right at the heart of the old town, and this part was really walkable. There was a nice promenade with beautiful views of the town. You could see the old town from different angles. You could see lots of people strolling around and enjoying a nice afternoon in Monopoli. If you're wondering if there are actually beaches in Monopoli and whether it's possible to swim there, yes, there are absolutely lots of beaches around the old town, but you need to go for a little walk. I think the closest ones maybe are around 5-6 minutes walking, and there are more beaches located maybe 10-15 minute walk from the old town. So yeah, there are definitely plenty of swimming opportunities in Monopoli as well. But if you're looking for a place that has a beach right at your doorstep in the heart of the town, maybe Polignano a Mare is a better choice, especially if you're looking for a striking, picturesque beach. However, I think both of these towns are absolutely worth visiting, and they are among some of the most beautiful towns in Puglia. Just like the next location, which was located a slightly longer drive from Monopoli. It took us just over half an hour to get there, and on the way we passed countless plantations of olive trees. It looked very impressive, and actually Puglia is one of the regions that produces the most olive oil in the world, and we tried many types of olive oil in Puglia, and it tasted glorious, absolutely fantastic. So that's an idea for a souvenir that you can bring from Puglia.
And pretty much the last stop for today is the beautiful white town of Ostuni, or Ostuni. We're currently walking up to the old town, and it's raining a little bit, but not too much. The views from here are majestic.
So Ostuni was not located on the coast, so it wasn't a coastal town, but that wasn't the biggest difference from Polignano a Mare, Monopoli or Alberobello. It looked completely different. It actually looked like a town from a completely different country. It somehow reminded me of Greece, maybe because of white walls. It also reminded me a little bit of Marbella, old town in Spain, also because it had lots of white houses. But unlike Marbella, where they had lots of colorful elements and colorful, for example, flower pots on the windows, Ostuni didn't have many colors in lots of the streets. Of course, some of the houses and churches had blue doors, and that's also another thing that reminded us of Greece. And of course, it's no surprise that Ostuni is known as the White City. It is also sometimes referred to as the White Pearl or La Perla Bianca. The main cathedral of Ostuni was built in the 15th century in the early Gothic style, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There are multiple ways to enter Ostuni. We entered from a less touristy entrance where we parked the car from another gate. That's why the town looked so residential and so empty for a while. But this is actually the main path, there's no gate, but it's the main street that leads right to the heart of Ostuni. And this street is full of shops, restaurants and places to try olive oil. I found at least a couple of olive oil shops, and they sell olive oil from the trees that surround Ostuni. Actually, from the top of the town, you can see the beautiful panorama of the area, and you can see the plantations of olive trees. Before visiting Ostuni, we've heard that the sunset in the town are out of this world. They are absolutely majestic, and the town is best to visit at sunset. But at first we were a little bit sad because it was raining when we arrived, but then the sky cleared up and it was enough for us to see beautiful light and gorgeous sunset. So I can definitely recommend visiting Ostuni during the sunset because you will see the city in the best light possible. Our final destination for the day was the town called Gravina. We arrived there when it was already dark, so we actually checked in at our Airbnb. It was really affordable, definitely one of the most affordable Airbnbs in the area. And we also went for a little walk around Carabinio. It's not a very touristy location. Nonetheless, it has a very beautiful old town that reminded us a little bit of a mixture between Ostuni and Monopoli. And it even had a little castle. For dinner, we stopped at a place called San Marco Wine Bar. They had little nice cheese and charcuterie boards and some warm dishes like little snacks as well, and a really good selection of wine. So I can definitely recommend it. The next day we actually spent working remotely, but we had some time during lunch to see the city during the sunlight and walk around the old town again. It was Monday, so the town was like a ghost town, and the plan was actually to go to a sandwich bar to get something for lunch, but literally every single place in Carabinio was closed. Not a single thing was open, so instead we just walked around the old town. As I mentioned in the first video from Puglia, when we walked around another small town, Specchia, Italy has so many beautiful locations all around the country that in another country, this place would have been a main tourist attraction. But just because Italy has so many places, this is just any other town, any other historic town. Although I would still say that Carabinio is on the prettier side. It's definitely a nice place, and I'm pretty sure it's full of life on a Saturday, but it looks completely dead on a Monday. So we went for a little walk, and we still had some time left from a lunch, so we decided to Google some places. I found an open grocery store, so that's where we headed to buy lunch. And we were in luck because the grocery store was indeed open, so we were able to get us something for lunch. we returned to the Airbnb, ate and worked a little bit, and then drove back to the airport, which was just a short half an hour drive away. This was the final part of the Puglia trilogy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you in the next videos. Thanks for watching. Bye!